Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Samslow33, and welcome to Mix Up, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most hyped decks of the new format, which is Garchomp Altaria. And before I get into more detail about the deck, I should say that my throat isn't feeling the best this week, so my voice may seem a little I'm sorry, but the video comes out tomorrow, and I don't really know what to do, other than just hope it doesn't hurt too bad. Anyway, Garchomp Altaria, there's quite a lot of hype about this deck. It seems very powerful, it seems very consistent, it seems very fast, and I don't get any of it. It's not fast, it's not powerful, and it's not too consistent. I just don't really get it. I think this deck won't do too great, but it does have decent matchups against the Rayquaza deck I talked about and against the Hydreigon deck I talked about, so maybe it's more of a anti-meta deck. But for now, let's just talk about the deck and see why I'm not a big fan of it. Alright, so before I start talking about Garchomp, we might as well talk about the World Championships of 2012, which have just ended this past Sunday. And we have our World Champion. The final match was quite exciting. It was streamed live by GameSpot, which normally would just do the video game championships, but now decided to do the TCG championships as well. And the final match was between Darkrai Mewtwo and Terrakion Mewtwo, Darkrai. Oh, fun. So going into this, we knew that Darkrai was going to win our final match. And the winner in the end was Igor Costa, the four-time Portugal national champion. And the runner-up was Harrison Leven, whatever. And it was quite an amazing match. The first game, Igor actually lost in a pretty bad setup. And then the next two games, he just kind of steamrolled. He used Mewtwo in the final game. And it was just a really amazing game overall. Final match actually ended with Harrison having his Shaman prize on the last turn of time, or his last turn of time, so turn 2, and then Igor won on turn 3. So, just an amazing game, and I'm glad to have that as our final game, even if it didn't have the greatest decks behind it, sadly. And for what happened in the senior and junior division, the person who won the senior division was running Zekrom Electric, so I guess it wasn't completely dead, and I don't believe it had Terrakion in it, but I don't know, I don't know much about that. And the juniors, we have a Terrakion Mewtwo deck. At least we had some versatility in the finalists, but I believe that the runners-up of all three divisions were Darkrai decks, so meh. I'm not too excited about that. I'm so glad we're going to be done with this stupid Darkrai mania. Ugh. Anyways, yeah, nothing too unique. And let me, guys, show you what the top 16 looked like. We had 10 Darkrai decks, 3 CMT, 1 Zekrom Electric, 1 Terrakion Mewtwo, and 1 Acelgor Vileplume Chandelure Mew Prime deck. And I heard something about there being some kind of Jirachi deck with a similar engine to ZPST, where you play down Jirachi and then Shaman the energy onto things to donk, but I don't know how that was true or not, or how well it did, or whatever, but I don't think it did very good. Didn't hear much about it. We probably would have heard a lot about it if it did much better. Alright, so now we're done with the World Championships, and now let's get on to Garchomp. And Garchomp, from the look of it, does not seem too unique at all. He has 140 HP, 2 attacks, 1 retreat cost, a dragon weakness, obviously. His first attack, Mach Cut, for 1 fighting energy, does 60 damage and says discard a special energy card attached to the fighting Pokemon, which is very good for 1 single energy card. Of course, most cards have that much damage and a drawback, but now format's starting to get more powerful, and Garchomp is setting the bar for 1 energy attacks. But it will be getting better in a minute. And his second attack is not nearly as good, but it's still good enough to be on the card. Dragon Blade for 1 water and 1 fighting. Does 100 damage and says discard the top 2 cards of your deck. So not the greatest second attack, but his first attack is very good for 1 energy. And what Altaria does is basically its ability, Fight Song, lets all of your dragon types have 20 more attack power. So with 2, 3, and by some ridiculous extent you get 4 out. That will probably not happen because you probably shouldn't be running 4 in the first place. You could be doing 100 damage for a single energy, 140 for 2. That's enough to knock out most stage 2s in 1 hit. It takes out Empoleon in 1 hit, Terrakion in 1 hit, Hydreigon, obviously because he's weak to Dragon, Kling Clang, Garbodor, takes out everything. Everything just goes down in 1 hit that's not an EX. But speaking of EXs, It does take out EXs in a quick manner, does 2-hit KO them usually, unless he's using Mach Cut and they have an EV Light attached to them. But he should be fine dealing with EXs. They shouldn't be able to KO him because of his 140 HP, which is very nice. And now let's talk about another aspect of the deck that is very powerful, which is Gabite. Has a very nice ability that says search your deck for one Dragon-type Pokemon each turn and put it in your hand. And that being part of your Garchomp line is just fantastic, because you can evolve your Gibbles up to Gabite and then search out Altarias, then turn 3 you search out the Garchomps, and bam, you're set. So Gabite is definitely one of the reasons this deck has been getting a lot of hype. And for the Gibble of the deck, this may seem like an obvious decision. The Sand Attack one, of course, uses Sand Attack, it has higher HP. Probably a better second attack, it just seems like a much better card. But when you think about it, the other Gibble isn't too awful. It has pretty similar energy requirements, it has 10 less HP and a really bad first attack. But when you think about it, that first attack could be doing 50 or 70 damage with multiple Altarias in play. So that could set up an EX KO for Garchomp. So I think running 1 and maybe 2, or possibly all of them if you like it enough, of the 50 HP Gibble could be a decent idea. And the Swablu isn't actually too awful either. Well, it's not Dragon-type, obviously, because it's not Dragon-type in the game. Since it can't be searched out by Gabite, that's not a plus. But it does have a first attack called Sing that says defending Pokemon is now asleep. So it's a nice first starter to stall a little bit. Make sure the Emolgas don't attack or whatever. And now let's get to the deck list. As you can see, I have a very thick Garchomp line of 4-4-4. This is just because you usually want to get out as many Gabites as possible. Running 2 would just be stupid. 3 would be a good idea, but 4 I think would be pretty good just because it's a really good idea. Just, really good searching power. And you should have like 1 or 2 Gibbles out on the first turn, so this makes it a lot easier to get it out as well. And for the Gibbles, I chose 3 Sand Attack Gibble and 1 of the 50 HP Gibble, just because it's more of a situational attack, but turn 1, when you start with it and you don't have many other options, it's pretty useless. Altaria line is 3 and 3, obviously chose all of the same one, it's far superior to the other one, it doesn't get the attack boost that Gibble does because it's not Dragon type. And you can't search out for it with Gabite, so that's also a big problem. And next we have 3 Emolga. Because you have so many Pokemon you have to set up, you usually want to get out 2 Altaria, at least 2 Gabite, and 1 to evolve into Garchomp, which should not be a problem in the slightest, because you can search for them. So it's like 3 or 4 Pokemon you have to get out, and Emolga, of course, helps you get them out very fast. It's not as easy to get out this many Pokemon with just level balls and whatnot. And also, with a high count of 3, that means it's a much more likely possibility that can be your starter. And you definitely want this card to be your starter in this deck, otherwise you could be having a really slow setup. For Catcher, don't need to explain this, nothing different, blah blah. For your Candy, now for a Stage 2 deck that needs to get its Stage 2 out, its main attacker, it can't function without it. You might think 3 would be a little ridiculous, but you usually are going to be evolving through Gabites anyway, and you want to get as many as possible, so having 3 or Candy isn't as much of a flaw as you might think it would be. We have a lot of Level Ball. This is because everything in your deck except for Garchomp can be searched out with Level Ball, and for Garchomp you have both Gabite and our next search card. So Level Balls definitely be run that on a high count, because the only thing you can't search out for is Garchomp, which you should have been able to get by now by turn 2 or 3 or whatever. And for 2 Pokemon communication in this deck, as you can see, I have 21 Pokemon in the skeleton list, and that's definitely enough that you'll be able to have a Pokemon out in your hand most of the time. So communication could be good in this deck, just because if you have so many Pokemon like the old days. 3 switch in case you want to start with Emolga and you start with Gibble or Swablu, whatever, and you just need to switch out for it. And also, when you attach to Altaria and retreat, that could be a problem since you only run about 10 to 12 energy, and you don't want to be wasting getting back some of those energy with Super Rod or whatever, so I think Switch would be a good idea to run at higher counts. 2 Super Rod because a lot of your lines are very thick, and of course you need Garchomp to be out and attacking all the time, so Super Rodding back is the easier way to get at least a lot more Garchomps out each game. For the supporters, 3 Juniper, this is just because you have so many Pokemon and you don't want to be discarding them, but Bianca also would not be very good, and running so little supporters with like random receiver or whatever could be a problem. But I think Juniper is the next best option, and so that's why I'm running a lower count of this than the others. 4N, it's awesome, blah, blah, blah. Sharon, of course, is a very good card. You can't be discarding cards with Ultra Ball to get your hand smaller for Bianca to be better, and also you have to have so many evolutions on your field and in your hand by turn 2, so you're not going to be able to get Bianca down very far. But with Sharon, you should always be able to draw 3 cards, and Bianca would probably only be getting you 1 or 2 most of the time. And for the energy, we have 6 fighting type energy, just because your primary attack only costs 1 energy, and you shouldn't be needing too many of those energy, so 6 should be fine. 4 blend energy, water, fighting, lightning, metal. Of course, this counts for both of your energy types, so it's definitely needed in 4 unless you have a fear of the mirror match or enhanced hammer, but you shouldn't really be fearing the mirror match because they'd be KOing you in 1 hit anyway. Now let's get started. We've got some text for the deck. First, there's the secret rare Rayquaza. Of course, he's showing his face again. And basically, with this guy, you can use blend energy to be able to use his first attack, to be able to dunk in the mirror match, as well as Eels, which is probably one of your worst matchups. So, yeah, you can only use 4 energy for it, so you'd have to have something that searches out Rayquaza, which would have to be Pokemon Communication if you only run the 2 I suggest, and the blend energy and a switch / starting with a Molga to be able to do that. So, it could be an interesting one to try, but I don't think it's going to be a great card in the deck. Mew EX is another one. This one is basically going to be used as a sort of Mewtwo counter, since the deck doesn't really want to run double Carlos energy or whatever. So Mew EX could be a good idea, but since you can only attach 1 energy per turn and do 60, and you can't use Altaria to power it up, they can't really kill Mewtwo in 1 hit unless it uses something like Energy Switch or use DCE to use its X-Ball to be able to get it out. So, I don't know, maybe if you use it with like Energy Switch or something, or EXP Share, but then that would ruin the surprise factor anyway. Now, this one might be a little stretch, but Terrakion might be an interesting idea, since Fighting Energy is in the deck. You can use that with EXP Share, and then once Garchomp dies, you can retaliate and KO. And Darkrai is not one of this deck's best friends, so Terrakion could be a nice idea for that. It also helps in the Eels matchup quite a bit. Drifblim, I talked about this one in the Dragon's Exalted review, but since Garchomp discards Special Energy with his first attack, you can discard a bunch of Special Energy and then use Drifblim's attack to be able to do a lot of damage fast. But, of course, they would probably stop attaching their Special Energy if they saw either Drifloon or Garchomp. So, you could try testing it out, but unless the opponent just needs a Special Energy or just doesn't get it, then, I don't know, it could be not the best. Milotic is another Pokemon that uses Blend Energy to use its attack. You can use Clear Search and search for 3 cards and put them in your hand. That can, of course, get you a Supporter, an Evolution, and another Swablu or Altaria or Gadlight or whatever. Be able to use next turn. They can also get a Switch, but whatever. This would add another large line to your deck. You already have 2 pretty bulky lines. But this ability to search out 3 cards at once could actually be a really helpful asset in this deck, especially in such a slow deck like this. Giant Cape puts Garchomp out of range of KOs from 150 damage Pokemon like Zekrom EX. It also prevents Darkrai EX from doing Night Spear shenanigans where they Night Spear the active Garchomp and hit another one on the bench, and then catching the one they just did damage to, with a Dark Claw, of course, attached. This prevents Darkrai from doing those types of things, and also prevents Zekrom EX from killing you in 1 hit. A Giant Cape is definitely one of the best tools you can have for this deck. Water Energy could be another one to try out. I know you already have Blend Energy to use the second attack for, but it seems like a lot of the times it's like, oh, you can just use Dragon Blade, but with 4 Blend Energies, just using that for the whole match probably won't be as easy as I might think with just 4 blends. So I think adding a couple Water Energies could be a good idea, especially since you could also use the Blend Energies as Fighting Energies, and you can also use Super Rod to get the Water Energies back, so Water Energy could be another one to test out. The last one is Max Potion, and since you use so little energy on your Pokemon, at least most of the time, you can be able to just heal them and attach an energy again. Of course, this is very helpful, especially against Darkrai EX or with Giant Cape attached. Max Potion is just a really great card, and it's just really annoying, and can be really annoying in this deck. And that's what you want it to be. Really, really annoying. And now let's talk about the matchups of the deck. Hydreigon, I'd say this one's about even. It's hard to tell. Mainly because you can knock out their Hydreigons in 1 hit very easily. and Darkrai can do weird Night Spear KOs on you and whatnot. So I'm not sure which way this would go. It probably depends on who would set up first. So this could be an interesting match, to say the least. Eels, this is definitely a very bad matchup. It's a lot faster than you. They have Zekrom EX to KO you in one hit, unless you have Giant Cape. And Max Potion can get rid of all that progress you've made on KOing their big bulky EXs. So Electric is definitely not a very good matchup. Now for the Rayquaza version of Eels, this one is a very good matchup because Rayquaza EX has a weakness to Dragon, and you can just KO it quickly. And you're probably a little faster than, you might be a little slower, but still rendering. They can use tech cards, of course, like Zekrom EX and Raikou EX to counter Garchomp, but having their 3 dead cards, which will most likely be their starter, is actually a pretty good thing about the deck. But having the main attacker, which will most likely be 3 or 4 of the Pokemon, be completely useless is definitely a nice thing to have against the Eels matchup. Against Straight Terrakion, either EX or non-EX, this one's a good matchup mostly because you can win a KO the regular Terrakion if it doesn't have Eviolite and you use Dragon Blade with 2 Altaria, and the Terrakion, EX, and Groudon EX and whatever also go down in 2 hits, while Garchomp takes 2 hits to KO no matter what, unless they're using some kind of combo with Landorus or Registeel with Groudon EX or something. But you'll just win the prize race overall, and the deck is also very slow to attack. They can't really like surprise KO any of your Pokemon with just 2 energy. So it's definitely a good matchup. Entei for the same reasons, but they can get some lucky flips with Burn and be able to KO your Pokemon easily. So it's definitely another very good matchup. Against the straight Darkrai or Speed Darkrai variants, this is definitely a bad matchup just because it's a lot faster than the Hydreigon version, and the Night Spear combos are really bad, especially since they don't have to waste their time setting up a stage 2. Darkrai is definitely a problem for this deck, it's very annoying towards the deck. Empoleon, this one is hard to say. I'd say it's a little uneven just because Empoleon is a lot faster than you are and it has a lot more consistent draw. But you do have to fill up your bench quite high, since you have to get like 2 Altaria and 2 Gabite and probably a Molga somewhere in there. Still probably be maxed out their damage output. It depends on the variant. If they're using Aerodactyl and be able to KO you in one hit, then that is definitely a very bad matchup. But if they're using different variants, you can KO them in one hit, but they're faster than you. So I don't know what about this one. Ninetales, this one is just straight a lot faster than you. You can use Max Potion to get most of their progress depleted off their attacks. But if, say, they attacked with Hex Flame after a Sporicide, they'd be 130 damage with Poison. Max Potion, you're down to 0. Next turn, another 10 damage, and then they can still use the same special conditions on you and knock you out anyway. So Max Potion would still be a little not too great, but I don't know. It's just a lot faster in my opinion. There's probably not much you can do. Against the Selgor, normally this wouldn't be too bad of a matchup, since you can KO Gothitelle in one hit, but your HP is that magic number that Selgor loves, the 140 HP, or 70 HP, which is what Altaria is. Both ones, when they get KO'd by poison, it goes back into their turn, meaning you don't get a turn of your own to attack or whatever. So, Selgor is definitely a very awful matchup, in my opinion. Garbodor is probably a pretty good matchup. Your abilities aren't needed, and it's pretty easy to KO since you can just Dragon Blade, Catcher, KO. So this is a pretty good matchup, just, kill their Garbodor, and, you'll probably be able to take on whatever they attack or they send up at you. Alright, to wrap things up here, its matchups don't seem great. It has 4 good matchups against the decks I just talked about, 1 even matchup, and 5 bad matchups, so that doesn't seem too great. It has 2 very unfavorable matchups, and not too many very favorable matchups. And what people seem to be saying, people are saying it's fast. You can call it anything you want except fast. It is not fast. You have to set up Garchomp, one or 2 Gabites, most likely 2 Altarias. That is a lot of stuff in this format. I find it hard to set up Eels. Setting up this is just ridiculous. I don't care how good Gabite is, you've got to evolve them sometime, and if you don't, they're going to get killed. So, just seems ridiculous to me how people are saying it's so fast. Now, I haven't tested the deck much or against it, mostly because I don't really have any plans to play it. It's just not my style. But it still doesn't seem very great. People are also saying it hits hard, it hits average. It can sometimes, if you get the second energy on and 2 Altarias out, it can KO stage 2s. But that's about it. It can't KO EXs in one hit or anything, so it's not too powerful. And the consistency, I'd say it's good on that mark. It seems once it gets set up, it should be able to do at least like 80 damage every turn, and that's a good thing to have. So overall, this deck might not be as good as people say it is. It did win a World Qualifier, I believe, in Japan, and I think that's about when it was invented. I'm not sure what kind of event it was. I think it was a World Qualifier, but that's probably where people are getting the hype from. And I don't know. It doesn't seem too fast to me. It doesn't seem too powerful to me. It doesn't seem consistent. It just doesn't seem that great to me, in my opinion. I think decks like Eels and Hydreigon will probably be the 2 front runners, and Garchomp taking up that nice 3rd place spot. And that is the episode. Garchomp Altaria is definitely not my favorite deck in the format, as you can probably tell, but it is some other people's favorite. Or one of their favorites. So you might want to test it out. I don't personally recommend it. There are definitely some other faster, more powerful, more consistent decks out there. But there's got to be some place where the hype's coming from, so I'm sure it's going to do okay. So tune in next week for probably one of the biggest garbage... Garbodor, it's Garbodor. I was going for pun, and there's like, nah, it's Garbodor. We're doing Garbodor next week. See you guys next week for Garbodor. Later.